I'm Amberlyn, 32, and I never thought I'd be hiding behind a potted plant at my own father's birthday party. Stay away from Dad's party. My brother Jason had warned over the phone that morning. You'll ruin everything. His words stung, but I'd made up my mind. After 5 years of family exile over something I still believed was right, I wasn't missing Dad's 60th. I couldn't have predicted what happened when I walked in, how the room would freeze, or how my father's new investor would recognize me instantly. Ms. Lynn, you're Daniel's daughter? Before I continue the story, let me know where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to hear how I turned this family nightmare into my biggest victory. Growing up as a Lynn meant understanding that business always came first. My father, Daniel Lynn, built Lynn Tech Solutions from nothing but determination and a small loan from my grandparents. I still remember visiting his first office, a converted garage with 3 employees and dreams bigger than the space could hold. By the time I was 10, Lynn Tech had become a regional powerhouse in enterprise software, and Dad had become something of a legend in our hometown of Boston. My mother, Grace, was the heart of our family. While Dad built the business, she built our home. She balanced my father's intense drive with warmth and perspective. Your father climbs mountains, she once told me, but I make sure he remembers to enjoy the view. When I was struggling with math in 6th grade, it was Mom who sat with me night after night, patiently explaining concepts until they clicked. Dad would have just hired a tutor. Jason, my older brother by 4 years, was always the natural heir to Lynn Tech. He shared Dad's analytical mind and business instincts. While I asked why about everything, Jason asked how things worked, how to make them better, how to turn them into profit. By high school, he was already interning at Lynn Tech during summers, soaking up everything our father could teach him. I was different. Creative, questioning, stubborn in ways that both frustrated and secretly delighted my father. Amber doesn't take the path. She makes her own, Mom would say. While Dad and Jason talked market share at dinner, I'd be sketching logos or writing stories. But I wasn't disconnected from the family business. I just saw it differently. Where they saw numbers, I saw narratives. Where they built systems, I envisioned brands. Everything changed when Mom was diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer during my sophomore year of college. I still remember the call. Standing in my dorm hallway, knees buckling as Dad's voice cracked for the first time in my life. The next 18 months were a blur of hospital visits, brief remissions, and crushing returns of the disease. We lost her during finals week of my junior year. Dad disappeared into work after that. The office became his sanctuary, 18-hour days his new normal. Jason dropped his MBA plans and joined Lynn Tech full-time as Dad's right hand. I finished college in a fog of grief, clinging to my marketing and communications classes as the only things that made sense. Our family dinners became rare, then extinct. The house felt empty even when we were all there. When I graduated, everyone assumed I'd join Lynn Tech's marketing department. Dad even had business cards printed with my name and Director of Marketing Communications beneath it, a title created just for me. The gesture was touching but also suffocating. I wanted to earn my positions, not inherit them. So I did the unthinkable. I declined and took a job with Robertson Media, a competing firm. Dad didn't speak to me for 2 months after that. Jason ran interference, explaining that Dad felt betrayed, but would come around. He lost Mom, and now feels like he's losing you too, Jason said during one tense coffee meeting. Just give him time. Time helped, but things were never the same. I excelled at Robertson, quickly moving up from junior copywriter to senior strategist. I learned everything I could, built my network, and 3 years later, launched Phoenix Media, my own boutique marketing firm specializing in tech startups. Dad sent flowers to my office opening, a peace offering of sorts, but the card just read, "Congratulations," in his secretary's handwriting. 2 years after Mom died, Dad met Melissa Taylor at an industry conference. She was the HR director for a tech firm in Seattle, smart and confident with a kindness that reminded me a little of Mom. They dated for nearly a year before marrying in a small ceremony. I genuinely liked Melissa. She made Dad laugh again, but Jason remained cold toward her, viewing her as an intruder in the family business and our lives. Melissa tried to bridge the growing gaps in our family. She organized holiday gatherings and casual dinners, attempting to rebuild something that resembled a family unit. I appreciated her efforts, while Jason maintained a polite but distant relationship with her. Dad seemed caught in the middle, loving his new wife but constantly navigating the complicated dynamics between his children. By the time I turned 30, I had built Phoenix Media into a respected firm with 15 employees and a client list that included several successful startups. Dad occasionally referred clients to me, small peace offerings that I gratefully accepted. We had reached a fragile truce, seeing each other at holidays and occasional dinners, carefully avoiding topics that might reignite old tensions. Then came the incident that would shatter even that tentative peace. 5 years ago, I accidentally discovered something at Lintech that would change everything between us, something that would lead to my complete exile from the family until that fateful birthday party. The trouble began during what should have been a simple favor. Dad had been hospitalized with pneumonia, working himself to exhaustion as usual, and Jason was overwhelmed trying to manage both Dad's responsibilities and his own. Despite our complicated relationship, I offered to help. Jason reluctantly asked me to prepare the presentation materials for an important meeting with Robert Mitchell, a potential investor who could take Lintech to the next level with a $50 million cash infusion. Just update the slide deck with the latest financials and projections, Jason said, giving me access to the company's secure drive. Mitchell needs to see stable growth and clean books. I'd been around the business long enough to know what investors look for, so I dug into the numbers to create the most compelling narrative. That's when I noticed discrepancies in the accounts. Small at first, expense categorizations that seemed off, revenue recognition that appeared accelerated, but as I followed the trail, I found larger issues. A pattern emerged of what looked like deliberate manipulation of financial statements spanning at least 2 years. I stayed up all night cross-referencing documents, my marketing project forgotten as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. By morning, I was certain someone at Lintech was cooking the books. The company wasn't failing, far from it, but someone was making it look even more successful than it was. For a private company seeking investment, this was serious. For my family's legacy, it was devastating. I called Jason first, but he dismissed my concerns immediately. "You're not an accountant, Amber," he said, voice tight with irritation. "These are complex financial structures that you don't understand. Just finish the marketing materials and leave the numbers to us." His dismissal only strengthened my resolve. I gathered the documents and drove to the hospital to see Dad. I remember the antiseptic smell of his private room, the beeping monitors, how small he looked in the hospital bed despite his commanding presence. "Dad, I found something while working on the Mitchell presentation," I said after our initial greetings. "There are irregularities in the financial reporting, significant ones." He sat up straighter, instantly alert despite his illness. "Show me." I laid out what I'd found, watching his face carefully. I expected shock, anger at whoever was responsible. Instead, I saw something that chilled me: recognition, followed by calculation. "This is why I wanted you at Lintech," he finally said. "You have a good eye." "But Amber, these are strategic accounting practices. Every growing company does this to some degree." "Dad, this goes beyond aggressive accounting. This is fraud." His face hardened. "This is business. Mitchell wants a certain picture, and we're providing it. Once we have his investment, the actual performance will make these adjustments irrelevant." "But that's not how it works," I insisted. "If Mitchell invests based on fraudulent information, that's securities fraud. You could go to prison." "Enough." His voice was sharp despite his weakened state. "You've been gone for years building your little marketing company, and now you waltz in and think you understand how to run my business? Victor and I have built this company for 30 years. We know what we're doing." Victor Reynolds was Dad's oldest friend and business partner, the company's CFO since its founding. The implications were clear. This went all the way to the top. "Dad, please," I begged. "Call off the Mitchell meeting. Review these practices. There's still time to fix this before anyone outside knows." "What I need to fix is your interference," he said coldly. "Give me those documents and go home." I'll handle this. I didn't give him the documents. Instead, I did something that would haunt our relationship for years. I sent an anonymous tip to Mitchell's team warning them to conduct extra due diligence on Linteca's financials before investing. I included enough details to point them the right direction without explicitly incriminating my father. The fallout was swift and severe. Mitchell's team postponed the investment pending a full audit. Dad, realizing what I'd done, was furious beyond anything I'd ever seen. Jason called me a traitor. Even Melissa, who typically stayed out of business matters, couldn't hide her disappointment. I was trying to protect the company, protect all of you. I tried to explain during the explosive family meeting that followed. You've potentially destroyed everything we've built, Dad said, his voice quiet but trembling with rage. Until you understand loyalty, you're not welcome at Lintec or in this house. Jason was less restrained. You've never been part of this company, never understood what it takes to succeed in this industry. You just lobbed a grenade and walked away like you always do. The audit took 3 months. In the end, Lintec was forced to restate its earnings, pay a substantial private settlement to some existing shareholders, and implement new financial controls. Mitchell eventually made a smaller investment than originally planned. The company survived, but the damage to our family seemed irreparable. I threw myself into Phoenix media, expanding aggressively into new markets. For months, I checked the business news daily, terrified I'd see headlines about Linteca's collapse or my father's arrest. Neither happened. Instead, there was a quiet announcement that Victor Reynolds was leaving the company for personal reasons. Dad promoted someone from within to replace him, and business continued. My calls to the family home went unanswered. Birthday cards were returned unopened. I sent emails to Dad that received only brief, formal responses clearly written by his assistant. Jason blocked my number entirely. Only Melissa occasionally sent short texts, updates on Dad's health, a photo of their vacation, never acknowledging the rift, but never fully cutting contact either. The silence was deafening. I'd been raised in a family that valued loyalty above all else, and in their eyes, I had committed the ultimate betrayal. In my darkest moments, I questioned my actions. Had I overreacted? Was this normal business practice as Dad suggested? But every time I reviewed the documents I'd kept, I knew I'd made the only choice I could live with. 5 years passed this way. I dated occasionally, but nothing serious developed. The weight of my family situation made it hard to let anyone get close. Phoenix media thrived, growing to 30 employees with offices in Boston and New York. I bought a condo overlooking the Charles River and adopted a rescue dog named Baxter. From the outside, my life looked successful and complete. Inside, I carried the hollow ache of family lost. Then, last month, a cream-colored envelope arrived in my mail. Inside was an invitation to Daniel Lynn's 60th birthday celebration, a formal affair at the Beaumont Hotel downtown. No personal note, just my name elegantly printed on the invitation. I stared at it for hours, wondering if this was an olive branch or a mistake. I called Melissa, who answered on the 4th ring. "Yes, Amber, you're invited," she confirmed, sounding tired but kind. "It was my idea, but your father agreed. It's time this family started healing." Hope bloomed for the first time in years. Maybe, just maybe, this was our chance to start over. Then Jason called, shattering that fragile hope with 5 words that sent me right back to that hospital room 5 years ago. "Stay away from Dad's party. He doesn't want you there," Jason continued, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "Melissa sent that invitation without consulting anyone. This is a crucial time for Lintec. We have important investors attending, including William Carter." I gripped my phone tighter. William Carter? The former SEC investigator? The very same. He's now Linteca's largest outside investor, and this party is as much about cementing that relationship as it is about Dad's birthday. The last thing we need is you showing up and raising old questions. The familiar pain of exclusion washed over me, but this time, something else rose alongside it. Indignation. It's Dad's birthday, Jason. I'm his daughter. I have every right to be there. You lost that right 5 years ago, he snapped. Stay away, Amber. You'll ruin everything. Again. The call ended abruptly, leaving me standing in my kitchen, invitation still in hand. Baxter nudged my leg, sensing my distress, and I absently scratched behind his ears. The brief hope I'd felt crumbled, replaced by a crushing wave of rejection. I called Rachel Bennett immediately. We'd been best friends since college, and she was the only person who knew the full story of what had happened with my family. 20 minutes later, she was at my door with a bottle of wine and her signature no-nonsense attitude. Of course you're going, she declared after I recounted Jason's call. This William Carter connection is interesting, though. I poured us each a glass of wine. What do you mean? Carter was pretty famous at the SEC for going after financial fraud in tech companies. Left to start some kind of ethics-focused investment firm. If he's now Lintecha's biggest investor. That suggests the company's financial practices are squeaky clean now, I finished her thought. Which means I was right 5 years ago. Rachel nodded. Exactly. Jason doesn't want you there not because you were wrong, but because you were right. Your presence would remind everyone of that time the company had to clean up its act. The realization was both vindicating and painful. But why would Dad go along with banning me? If the company's clean now. Men like your father don't easily admit mistakes, Rachel said gently. And Jason has been in his ear for 5 years, painting you as the villain. I spent the next week oscillating between determination to attend and anxiety about the confrontation that would inevitably result. I researched Lintech obsessively, discovering that the company had indeed undergone significant changes in the past few years. New compliance officers, a restructured board, and a growing reputation for ethical business practices. And at the center of it all was William Carter's investment firm, which specialized in reformed tech companies. The night before the party, I had a panic attack, my first in years. Sitting on my bathroom floor, struggling to breathe, I questioned everything. Was I going for reconciliation or vindication? Was I willing to cause a scene at my father's birthday? What did I really hope would happen? Morning brought clarity. I wanted my family back, but not at the cost of pretending I'd been wrong. I wanted reconciliation, but with truth as its foundation. I would go to the party, be respectful and dignified, wish my father happy birthday, and leave if asked. No confrontations, no accusations, just a daughter trying to mend a broken relationship. Rachel helped me choose an outfit, a deep blue dress that was elegant without being flashy. You look like success, she declared as I twirled in front of the mirror. Nothing says I was right like living well. I bought Dad a gift, a first edition copy of The Innovator's Dilemma, the book that had inspired him to start Lintech all those years ago. I wrote a simple card. Happy 60th, Dad. With love always, Amber. No recriminations, no passive-aggressive hints, just love. As I prepared to leave my condo that evening, Rachel gave me a fierce hug. Remember, you've built an amazing life and company without them. Whatever happens tonight doesn't change that. I nodded, fighting back tears. I know, but they're still my family. Text me updates, she insisted. I'll be on standby with either celebration champagne or emergency ice cream. The drive to the Beaumont Hotel was the longest 20 minutes of my life. Each stoplight was an opportunity to turn around, each green light pushing me closer to confrontation. I rehearsed what I would say to Dad, to Jason, to Melissa. I practiced keeping my composure regardless of their reaction. As I handed my keys to the valet and stood before the hotel's grand entrance, I took a deep breath and made my final decision. I was going in. Whatever happened next would at least be better than 5 more years of silence. The Beaumont's grand ballroom sparkled with elegant lighting and tasteful decorations. A string quartet played in one corner, while waitstaff in crisp uniforms circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. I recognized many faces from the tech industry and Lintecha's history. Dad had always maintained an impressive network. My moment of quiet observation ended abruptly when a security guard approached, his expression professionally blank. "Excuse me, miss. May I see your invitation?" I presented it, watching his face carefully. His slight frown confirmed my suspicion. My name was on some kind of watch list. "I'll need to verify this," he said, reaching for his radio. "Is there a problem?" A warm, familiar voice interrupted. Margaret Wilson, Dad's executive assistant since I was a child, appeared at my side. Her eyes widened in recognition, then crinkled with genuine pleasure. "Amber, you came." The security guard hesitated, looking between us. "She's Daniel's daughter," Margaret told him firmly. "I'll take responsibility." She linked her arm through mine and led me away before he could object. "Thank you," I whispered as we moved deeper into the party. I wasn't sure I'd make it past the front door. Margaret's smile faded slightly. "Jason left specific instructions. But it's ridiculous. You belong here." She squeezed my arm. "Your father will be pleased," whatever he might say initially. I wasn't so sure, but Margaret's confidence bolstered my courage. She pointed out where Dad was holding court near the far windows, surrounded by business associates, looking distinguished in a tailored suit. My heart ached at the sight of him, his hair now completely silver, new lines around his eyes, but still unmistakably the father I'd missed for 5 years. "I should greet some other guests first," I said, not quite ready for that encounter. Margaret nodded understandingly. "He'll be making rounds all evening. Take your time." I made my way through the crowd, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. Several former Lintech employees recognized me, reactions ranging from pleasant surprise to awkward acknowledgement. I maintained a poised smile, making small talk while keeping one eye on my father's movements across the room. "Amber." The cool voice behind me belonged to Melissa. I turned to find my stepmother looking elegant in a burgundy gown, her expression carefully neutral. "I wasn't sure you'd come after Jason called you. I thought about staying away," I admitted. "But it's Dad's birthday. I couldn't miss it." Something softened in Melissa's eyes. "I'm glad you're here. Whatever Jason thinks, this family needs healing. Is Dad? How will he react?" She glanced toward where Daniel was now laughing with a group of investors. "He knows you were invited." He didn't object. She touched my arm lightly. "He keeps a photo of you on his desk, you know. Your college graduation picture." The revelation caught me off guard, hope and hurt tangling in my chest. Before I could respond, a commotion near the entrance drew our attention. Jason had arrived, his wife Kimberly beside him, both smiling for the crowd. As he scanned the room, his eyes locked with mine, and the smile vanished. "I should go," I murmured to Melissa, not wanting to create a scene. "Stay," she insisted. "This is your family, too." But Jason was already making his way toward us, his expression thunderous. He gripped my elbow and steered me toward a side hallway, away from curious eyes. "I told you not to come," he hissed once we were relatively private. What part of that was unclear? I gently but firmly removed his hand from my arm. "I was invited, Jason, by Dad's wife. Melissa doesn't understand what's at stake. William Carter is here tonight, and the last thing we need is reminders of past issues." "I'm not here to remind anyone of anything," I said evenly. "I'm here to wish Dad happy birthday, and then I'll leave if that's what he wants." Jason ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "You always do this. Act like your intentions are pure while you're throwing grenades into the family. That's not fair." "What's not fair is you showing up after 5 years of absence, just when things are finally stable again." The accusation stung.
Absence?
"I've tried to contact Dad countless times. My calls, letters, emails, all ignored. I didn't choose this estrangement, Jason. You chose to betray the family business. I chose to prevent Dad from committing securities fraud," I countered, keeping my voice low but intense. "I chose to protect the company, even if no one else sees it that way." Jason's face flushed. "You need to leave."
Now.
"Not until I've spoken to Dad." I stood my ground, meeting my brother's glare with steady resolve. 15 minutes, Jason. Let me wish him happy birthday, give him his gift, and if he asks me to leave, I will." He seemed about to argue further when movement at the end of the hallway caught our attention. A distinguished man in his late 50s with salt and pepper hair and penetrating eyes was watching our exchange with interest. "Mr. Carter," Jason said, instantly shifting to a more professional demeanor. "I was just coming to find you. There are several people eager to meet you." William Carter nodded politely, but kept his focus on me. "And who is this?" Jason hesitated, clearly reluctant to introduce me. "Amber Lynn," I said, extending my hand. "Daniel's daughter." Carter's handshake was firm, but what struck me was his expression, a flash of recognition followed by intense curiosity. "Miss Lynn, you're Daniel's daughter?" His gaze moved between Jason and me, assessing the obvious tension. "Interesting. Very interesting." Jason laughed nervously. "Amber doesn't work at Lintech. She runs her own marketing firm." "Phoenix Media," I supplied. "I know," Carter said, surprising us both. "I've followed your work with great interest, Ms. Lynn. Your campaign for TechSecure was particularly impressive." Jason's confusion was evident, but before he could respond, Carter continued. "I wonder if I might have a private word with your sister, Jason? There's a matter I'd like to discuss." It wasn't really a request. Jason nodded stiffly and departed, throwing me one last warning glance. As he disappeared back into the main ballroom, Carter gestured to a small sitting area at the end of the hallway. "Shall we?" I followed, puzzled and intrigued by this unexpected turn of events. As we sat down, Carter studied me with an intensity that was almost uncomfortable. "You look remarkably like your mother," he finally said, catching me completely off guard. "You knew my mother?" A small smile crossed his face. "Grace and I were classmates at MIT. We lost touch after graduation, but I always remembered her brilliance." His expression grew serious. "But that's not why I wanted to speak with you, Ms. Lynn. I think we have a much more recent connection, one that might surprise you." Carter leaned forward, lowering his voice. 5 years ago, someone sent an anonymous tip to Robert Mitchell's due diligence team regarding Linteca's financial reporting. That tip likely saved your father's company and possibly kept him out of prison. My heart pounded in my chest. "How do you know about that?" "Because Mitchell shared that information with me." Carter's eyes never left mine. I was consulting for his firm at the time, having recently left the SEC. That tip led to an investigation that uncovered significant financial improprieties at Lintech and several other companies in Victor Reynolds' network. I struggled to maintain my composure. Victor Reynolds was my father's CFO and oldest friend. Victor Reynolds was also the architect of a sophisticated accounting fraud scheme that spanned multiple tech companies, Carter said grimly. "We'd been tracking him for years, but could never get enough evidence. Your tip changed that." My mind raced, trying to process this new information. My father, was he involved? Carter's expression softened slightly. "Based on our investigation, Daniel was likely unaware of the full extent of the fraud. Reynolds kept him insulated, managing the financial reporting while your father focused on product development and client relationships. Not that this absolves him completely. As CEO, he should have had better oversight." So, when I confronted him about the irregularities, "You threatened the house of cards Reynolds had built," Carter finished. "The subsequent audit forced everything into the open, but in a controlled way that allowed the company to survive. If it had continued until a formal SEC investigation, the outcome would have been much worse." I sat back, stunned. All this time, I thought I'd nearly destroyed the company. That's what Dad and Jason believed. "On the contrary, your actions ultimately saved Lintech. After the Mitchell incident and Reynolds' departure, your father implemented stringent new financial controls and governance structures. That's what caught my attention." Carter smiled slightly. "I invest in reformed companies, businesses that have faced ethical challenges and emerged stronger with better practices. Lintech has become something of a model case." "Does my father know about the anonymous tip?" "That it was me." "I don't know what he knows," Carter replied carefully. "But I can tell you that the source's identity was protected. Only Mitchell, myself, and now you know for certain." The irony was almost too much to bear. For 5 years, I'd been estranged from my family for an action that had actually saved them. I'd carried the burden of being labeled a traitor when I'd been their unexpected savior. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because ethical actions should be recognized, even if belatedly. And because… There you are. Jason's voice interrupted as he rounded the corner. Mr. Carter, several board members are asking for you. His eyes darted suspiciously between us. Carter stood, straightening his jacket. Your sister and I were having a fascinating conversation about corporate governance, Jason. Did you know she implemented an ethics-first approach at Phoenix Media that's become a case study at Harvard Business School? Jason looked taken aback. No, I didn't. Perhaps you should take more interest in your sister's accomplishments. Carter's tone was pleasant, but left no room for argument. Now, Ms. Lin, would you permit me to introduce you to your father? I believe he's been asking about you. He has… Hope flared in my chest. Indeed. Jason, why don't you join us? I think there are some family matters that might benefit from my perspective. Jason looked like he wanted to object but couldn't find a way to do so without offending Carter. He nodded tersely, and we followed Carter back toward the main ballroom. As we walked, Carter spoke quietly to Jason. Did you know, Jason, that the anonymous tip that led to the Mitchell audit 5 years ago saved your company from a much worse fate? My sources at the SEC tell me they were just weeks away from launching a formal investigation into Lintech and several other companies in Reynolds' network. Jason paled visibly. I wasn't aware. The tipster did you all a tremendous favor, Carter continued smoothly. In fact, when I learned the full story, it became one of the key factors in my decision to invest in Lintech. Jason's eyes flew to mine, sudden understanding dawning on his face. Before he could respond, we had reached a small private dining room off the main ballroom. Inside, my father sat alone, looking momentarily tired until he registered our presence. His eyes widened when they landed on me. Amber, he said, her name hanging in the air between us. Carter cleared his throat. Daniel, I believe you and your daughter have much to discuss. And Jason, I think you might have some new perspective to contribute as well. He nodded to us all. I'll rejoin the party and make your excuses for a short absence. As the door closed behind him, leaving the three of us alone, the weight of 5 years of silence filled the room. My father looked older up close, more vulnerable than I remembered. Jason stood awkwardly between us, his earlier anger seemingly replaced by confusion. You sent the tip to Mitchell, Jason said, breaking the silence. It wasn't a question. I nodded, steeling myself for another round of accusations. Instead, my father spoke, his voice rough with emotion. I know. I stared at my father, certain I'd misheard. You know? Dad nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving mine. I've known for about 6 months. After Victor was arrested. Arrested? The revelations were coming too fast now, each one shifting the ground beneath my feet. Securities fraud, wire fraud, tax evasion, Jason supplied, sinking into a chair across from Dad. The FBI had been building a case against him for years, apparently. They finally moved on him last fall. Dad gestured for me to sit. When they interviewed me, they mentioned an anonymous tip from 5 years ago that first put Reynolds on their radar. They didn't say it was you, but… He smiled faintly. Who else would have had both the access and the courage? You're not angry? I asked cautiously, taking the seat beside him. I was. For years. Dad sighed heavily. I was furious that you'd gone outside the family, that you hadn't trusted me to handle it. It felt like betrayal. I tried to warn you first, I reminded him quietly. In the hospital.
Yes.
And I shut you down. His admission surprised me.
Pride.
Stubbornness. Disbelief that Victor could be involved in anything illegal. Take your pick. Jason leaned forward. So, when did you change your mind about what Amber did? When the FBI showed me the evidence against Victor. Dad's voice hardened. Decades of friendship, and all the while he was using Lintech, using me, to enrich himself. The scope of it. He shook his head. If it had continued, if it had been discovered through formal investigation rather than a private audit after Amber's warning, I would likely be in prison alongside him. The realization that Dad understood, that he recognized what I'd done and why, unleashed 5 years of pent-up emotion. Tears filled my eyes, and I struggled to maintain my composure. "Why didn't you call me when you figured it out?" I asked, my voice breaking. "6 months, Dad." "Shame," he admitted, surprising me again. "How do you face your child after realizing they were right and you were catastrophically wrong? After punishing them for trying to protect you?" He reached for my hand tentatively. I've composed 1,000 apologies in my head. None seemed adequate. I squeezed his hand, unable to speak through the lump in my throat. The door opened, and Melissa slipped in. "Everything okay in here?" she asked, looking between us with cautious hope. "Getting there," Dad said, not releasing my hand. "Melissa has been pushing me to contact you for months," he told me. "The invitation was her idea, but I agreed to it. I wanted you here, Amber. I just didn't know how to bridge the gap I created." Melissa smiled gently. "When the FBI investigation concluded, your father finally told me the whole story. About your warning, the tip, everything." She took the seat beside Jason. "I've been telling him that a simple phone call would be a start." "A simple phone call wouldn't have been enough," Dad disagreed. "Not for this." Jason had been unusually quiet. Now he looked directly at me, his expression complicated. "I blamed you for years. Resented you for nearly tanking the Mitchell deal, for the audit, for the restructuring that followed. I never considered that you might have saved us from something worse." "None of us did," Dad said. "We were too focused on the immediate disruption to see the larger danger. All except Amber." William Carter knew, I told them, recounting my conversation with the investor. "He said my tip was one of the reasons he decided to invest in Lintech. He called it a reformed company." Dad nodded thoughtfully. "Carter has been a demanding but excellent partner. His ethics-focused approach has transformed Lintech's culture, for the better, I now realize." He smiled ruefully. "The company has never been more profitable or stable than since we implemented his governance requirements." A knock at the door interrupted us. Carter himself entered, looking apologetic. "Forgive the intrusion, but your absence is being noticed, Daniel. Perhaps you should rejoin your guests." Dad stood, still holding my hand. "We'll all return. Together." He looked at me questioningly. "If you're willing?" "Of course," I said, rising beside him. "It's your birthday party. I wouldn't miss it." As we prepared to rejoin the celebration, Carter pulled me aside briefly. "Your father approached me about a month ago with an interesting proposition," he said quietly. "I think he'll discuss it with you himself, but I wanted you to know I fully support his idea." Before I could ask what he meant, Dad called for everyone's attention, his arm now around my shoulders in a gesture that felt both foreign and achingly familiar. "For those who don't know, this is my daughter Amber," he announced proudly. "Founder and CEO of Phoenix Media, and the person who taught me that integrity is more important than prosperity." The room broke into polite applause, though I could see curious glances being exchanged. Many knew the rumors of our estrangement, even if they didn't know the cause. 5 years ago, Amber made a difficult choice that I didn't understand at the time, Dad continued, surprising me with his public acknowledgement. Today, I can say with certainty that her courage and ethical clarity saved this company and my freedom. It's taken me far too long to acknowledge that. Jason stepped forward, adding his voice to Dad's. Lintech's current success owes much to the course correction that followed Amber's actions. Our family owes her even more. The formality of the moment was overwhelming, but beneath it I felt something breaking free. 5 years of being vilified, of carrying a burden of perceived betrayal, lifting away. In its place, a tentative hope that what was broken might finally begin to heal. As the party continued, Dad took me aside again. "I have a business proposition for you," he said. "One I've been considering since I realized what really happened 5 years ago." "What kind of proposition?" I asked cautiously. "Lintech needs a chief ethics officer, someone with both marketing expertise and an uncompromising moral compass. The board has approved the position." Carter enthusiastically endorsed my first choice for the role. I stared at him in disbelief. You want me to come work at Lintech? After everything that's happened? Not exactly. Dad smiled. I'm proposing a partnership between Lintech and Phoenix Media. Your company would remain independent, but you would serve on our board and ethics committee, bringing your expertise and, frankly, your willingness to speak truth to power. That's unexpected. Take some time to think about it, he said. No pressure, no expectations. Just an opportunity to rebuild both the family and the business relationship if you want it. As guests began to leave, I found myself standing with Dad, Jason, Melissa, and Carter near the entrance, thanking people for coming. Like a family. The night had unfolded in ways I never could have anticipated when I first received that cream-colored invitation. Carter shook my hand warmly as he prepared to leave. I look forward to working with you, Ms. Lin, whatever form that takes. Thank you for what you shared tonight, I replied. It changed everything. He smiled. Truth usually does. 1 month after Dad's birthday party, I found myself walking through Lintech's headquarters for the first time in years. The building itself was new, a sleek glass and steel structure in Boston's innovation district that reflected the company's evolution since I'd last been involved. Dad met me in the lobby, greeting me with a warmth that still felt novel after our long estrangement. The board is eager to meet you, he said as we rode the elevator to the top floor. Especially since we announced the partnership. After weeks of careful consideration and extensive discussions with my team at Phoenix Media, I had accepted Dad's proposal, with some modifications. Phoenix would retain complete independence while establishing a specialized division to work with Lintech on ethics-focused communications and marketing. Additionally, I would serve on Lintech's newly formed Ethics and Governance Committee, alongside William Carter and 2 other independent members. How's Jason handling everything? I asked as we walked through the executive floor. Dad smiled slightly. Better than I expected. Having Carter explain the full story of what happened with Victor helped, and seeing the positive market reaction to our partnership announcement didn't hurt. Lintech's stock had jumped 12% when the partnership with Phoenix Media was made public, with analysts praising the company's continued commitment to ethical governance and innovative thinking. He sent me an email yesterday, I said. Asked if I wanted to grab lunch next week. Progress, Dad noted approvingly. The tour of the new headquarters revealed just how much had changed at Lintech. Dad proudly showed me the compliance department, now staffed with 15 professionals where once there had been just 2, and the open concept design that literally made the company's operations more transparent. After the audit, we rebuilt everything from the ground up, Dad explained. New financial systems, new reporting structures, new corporate values. He paused by a wall displaying the company's mission statement, which prominently featured the word integrity in bold letters. Some changes were forced on us. Others we embraced willingly once we saw the benefits. In the boardroom, he showed me the seat that would be mine during committee meetings. Your mother would be proud, he said quietly. She always said you had her moral compass and my stubbornness, a powerful combination. The mention of Mom brought both pain and comfort. I've missed being able to talk about her with someone who knew her as well as I did, I admitted. Dad nodded, understanding. Melissa has suggested we have a family dinner this Sunday. Just the 4 of us, you, me, Jason, and her. To talk, remember, reconnect. I'd like that, I said sincerely. Later that week, I met with Rachel to update her on everything that had happened. We sat at our favorite cafe. Baxter curled at my feet as I recounted the developments of the past month. So you were right all along, she said, shaking her head in amazement. And now you're the ethics guru for the company that exiled you. There's a certain poetic justice to it. I laughed. I don't think I qualify as a guru. But yes, it's a strange full circle moment. And how are things with Jason? Really? I considered the question carefully. Complicated. Healing. He apologized, which I never expected. We're finding our way back to being siblings rather than adversaries. And your dad? That's evolving too. We talk almost daily now about business and beyond. Last week he asked about my dating life, which was both awkward and wonderfully normal. I smiled at the memory. He's different now, more reflective, less absolute in his thinking. The Victor situation really shook him. Rachel raised her coffee cup in a toast. To families figuring their shit out, even if it takes 5 years and a fraud investigation. I clinked my cup against hers. I'll drink to that. The Sunday dinner at Dad and Melissa's new condo downtown marked another milestone in our family's reconstruction. Jason arrived with a bottle of wine and a tentative smile. Throughout the meal, conversation flowed more easily than I had dared to hope, memories of Mom interspersed with updates on our current lives. Remember when Mom made us all take that sailing lesson? Jason laughed. Dad turned green within 10 minutes. The only time I've ever seen him willingly surrender control to someone else, I added, and we all laughed, even Dad. Your mother had a way of getting me to do things against my better judgment, he acknowledged. Usually to my benefit. As the evening wound down, Dad pulled out an old photo album, something I hadn't seen in years. Melissa found this when we were moving, he explained, opening it to reveal family pictures from throughout our childhood. There was Mom holding infant Jason, looking exhausted but radiant. Dad teaching me to ride a bike, his hand protectively on the seat. The 4 of us on a beach vacation, squinting into the sun. Memories preserved from a time before business complexity and ethical dilemmas had fractured our family unit. I'd like to build new memories, Dad said, looking around the table at each of us. If you're willing. I am, I said without hesitation. Jason nodded his agreement. Me too. In the months that followed, our professional partnership flourished alongside our personal reconciliation. Phoenix Media's ethics division became a sought-after resource for tech companies looking to strengthen their governance practices. Linteca's reputation continued to grow, with William Carter frequently citing it as a model for corporate reformation. My relationship with Carter evolved into a valued mentorship. His insights into both business ethics and family dynamics proved invaluable as I navigated my new roles. The hardest thing about integrity, he told me during one of our regular coffee meetings, is that you rarely get immediate validation. Usually, it feels costly in the moment, with the benefits only becoming clear much later, if at all. I thought about the 5 years of family estrangement, the doubts and loneliness I'd endured. Worth it, though? He smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Always. As you've now seen for yourself. 1 year after Dad's fateful birthday party, we gathered again, this time for my 33rd birthday. A smaller affair at my condo, with just family and close friends. As Rachel brought out a cake ablaze with candles, I looked around at the faces surrounding me. Dad, relaxed and engaged in conversation with my colleagues. Melissa, showing Jason's wife photos from their recent vacation. Jason himself, playing with Baxter on the floor. The family I'd lost and found again, changed but intact. The relationships tested by principle and rebuilt on truth. Dad caught my eye across the room and raised his glass slightly in acknowledgement. No words needed to be spoken. We both understood the journey we'd taken and the distance yet to travel. As I blew out my candles, I didn't wish for anything concrete. I already had what mattered most, a family healing through honesty, a career built on conviction, and the knowledge that standing for truth, however painful in the moment, leads to the only kind of success truly worth having. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between loyalty and integrity? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more real-life experiences about family, ethics, and finding your way through difficult situations. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the hardest path leads to the most meaningful destination.